Hello friends, welcome back to another video and a special hello if you are new. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the books that I read in November and October. It has been a hot minute since I've sat in front of my camera and filmed, and it just feels really good to be back in the swing of things. I had daylight savings time always affects my mental health. And then I had some really wonderful opportunities with work happening, and it just took me a while to kind of get settled into this new routine, but we are back. So let's talk about the books I've been reading. I have a list and I'm just going to go in the order that I read the books in. The first book that I read in the month of October was The Kiss Curse by Erin. This is a sequel to the I can't remember what the first one was called off the top of my head. The X-Hex, I think is what it was called. It's set in a small town in Graves Glen, Alabama, and it is a town full of witches. So it's a university town, and you have students there that are going to university, just regular humans that are going for normal university things, and then you also have witches and wizards, I'm assuming, who come into town for, that type of education, I suppose. So our character Gwen owns a shop in town, and it is a magic shop, but it is targeted toward humans. So it has plastic cauldrons and tarot cards and glittery t-shirts and things like that. And this kind of man opens a shop across the street from her to kind of rival her shop, and it is selling kind of magic things but in a classier way. So the two of them are rivaling businesses, and something happens and they're forced to come together as witches to solve a potential curse that has been put on the town by like a new coven of witches who've come in. I know that sounds so crazy and I feel like I'm doing a horrible job at describing the plot, but these books are just so fun. They're just cute little like witchy romantic comedies. I think that they are the perfect palate cleansers for fall, and I really enjoy them. There is a third one called The Wedding Witch, which I believe is set around Christmas time, and I would love to be able to read that one and get to it before Christmas, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to squeeze it in, so we will see. The next book that I have is probably going to be one of my favorite books of the entire year. I devoured this book. It is A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle Jensen. This is the first book in the Saga of the Unfated series. So this is a fantasy romance, and it's set within the Viking culture. So the Viking gods, which are kind of this typical Viking gods that we know of, they will bestow certain children when they're born a drop of their blood, and then those children are given magical powers. So our story follows Freya, who has been gifted a drop of a goddess's blood, but she is told to keep her by her family to keep her powers secret because they don't want her used by the men around her. So basically there was a prophecy when Freya was born that basically stated that she would unite the Viking lands under one king. And so she kind of keeps her powers and abilities a secret, and she's in this marriage that she's not happy with this really cruel man, and then eventually a set of circumstances happen, and Freya is forced to reveal her powers in order to protect herself, and is sent off to go serve underneath the kind of king or jarl of her community. And while she's there, she meets the jarl's son, who is Bjorn, and Bjorn is kind of tasked with training Freya and trying to help keep her safe and keep her in check. And of course, there is just a budding romance. I hadn't read fantasy in a really long time, and because I think I was just kind of burnt out on it. So this was my first foray back into the genre for quite a few months, and I just loved this book so much. I just enjoyed it and I devoured it. I loved the magic system. I've always had such a huge fascination with Viking culture, and I love the TV show Vikings and The Last Kingdom and things like that. So this was just kind of right up my alley in terms of that. I really loved Freya as a character because I really admired her unwillingness to participate in violence. Like, she wasn't like some female heroines where she's like going to pay back everyone who's mistreated her. Like Freya really shied away from that and really wanted to protect the people that she loved, and I thought that was really beautiful. And I just adored Bjorn as a character, and the banter and the slow burn was really perfect. I just loved this series so much. The next book that I read was A Seaside Scandal by Ashtyn Newbold. Ashtyn Newbold is a Regency romance writer. This tells the story, I cannot think of names because it's been almost 2 months, but I think it's Alice Kellyway, I think is the heroine's name, but I can't remember the mouse. But anyway, Alice and her family are at the seaside and they are visiting. Alice is really excited and she has her best friend with her. Her best friend is a fortune hunter and is willing to kind of throw Alice under the bus to gain a man's affections. So this adorable little meet cute happens, and Alice she gets to know a gentleman in town, and he has a fortune, and he doesn't want people to know because he doesn't want to be pursued by fortune hunters. And I would also go as far as to say he has commitment issues. But Alice's friend finds this out and starts to kind of target him, and it kind of causes a strain on her friendship, but it also causes a strain on her relationship with the gentleman because he thinks that she's just competing for his fortune when really she's just aggravated at her friend and the turn of events that has happened. Basically, a set of circumstances happen and the two are forced to marry to avoid scandal. And then they have to try to figure out how to cope and how to be in a relationship with one another when they really liked each other at the beginning, but then at this point they were really starting to dislike one another. I love Ashtyn Newbold's writing. I think that it's just really fun and beautiful, and I think her romances are just laugh out loud funny, and I think they're very fitting with the Regency times. This one fell a little short for me, and it wasn't anything to do with the writing. I just think it was the plot. I really hate miscommunication tropes, and I'm saying this as someone who really loves Sally Rooney, so like I probably sound super hypocritical, but I hate when you have two characters who have miscommunicated the entire novel and then come the end they're magically okay, like within the last 10 pages, and then you're supposed to believe that everything's fine and they've solved issues and they're going to live happily ever after. I just hate when books end like that, and it just, I don't know. I'm fine with miscommunication if it ends realistically or if the characters have enough time to work through their issues and you get to see the characters work through their issues, which wasn't the case here. But there also was some really beautiful representation within this novel, which I thought was really wonderful, especially for a Regency novel, because I'd never really seen representation with people with disabilities in a Regency novel. So I did really enjoy that aspect of it, and I think it really helped set it apart from others. The next book that I read in the month of October was Autumn by Ali Smith. This tells the story of a young woman named Elizabeth. It's post-Brexit in England, and she is going to visit her elderly neighbor Daniel. Daniel is 100 years old and he's in some type of like nursing home or hospice care, like he's actively dying. So Elizabeth is going to visit him and she's reflecting upon the world as it is and how things are changing in England, and her relationship with her neighbor and her childhood while she's there. It does have points of view through Daniel, but he is having dreams as he's kind of laying in this state and he's not awake very often, so he and Elizabeth aren't able to communicate. It's just Elizabeth sitting there reflecting, or Elizabeth going about her day and reflecting, and then it's Daniel's dreams. And as the book goes on and as you assume Daniel gets closer to dying, his dreams become more and more lucid as it goes on. I loved this book. I just thought it was beautiful. It is a little difficult to read at first just because it is just such a rambling stream of consciousness. I know that I tried to read this book quite a few years ago and just could not get into it. But I think knowing more what to expect this time, I was able to kind of focus on it and be in the right mindset when I opened it up. But I love this book. I just thought it was just beautiful. If you really enjoy like really strong character driven novels and things like that, I just think this would really be your cup of tea. I just really loved this one. The last book that I read in the month of October was Devotions by Mary Oliver. I've been reading this book for the better part of probably 2 years. I love to read poetry or essays or something kind of short like that in the mornings instead of playing on my phone in bed. And when I had the time or was up all time, I read some of these poems. I just love Mary Oliver. I find that this book has just been absolutely life-changing. I think it's changed my perspectives on nature and the way that I approach and see the world, and the way that I just allow whimsy in my life, or the way that I pay attention to little details and little things. I just thought it was absolutely stunning. I've read a lot of Mary Oliver poetry I've seen on social media and things like that, but this was the first time that I actually read a full-on collection of her poems. And I think that her poems are so approachable as well. So I think if you've never read poetry, or if you're new to poetry and would like to start reading, I just think that this is a great way to go. Or if you think you hate poetry, I think that you could enjoy this as well. Again, it was just, I know it sounds silly, but it was just absolutely life-changing, and I know that I will revisit this, and hopefully I'll find another collection of hers to read soon. Moving on to what I read in November. The first book that I read in November was Dead Man Blues by S.D. House. This is a pen name for the author Silas House. Silas House is a regionally local author for me, and I've gotten to meet him a couple times at events, and I got to meet him at an event for this book, which was wonderful. So this is a thriller mystery, which typically isn't my genre, but it is set in the 1950s. And the main character is a disgraced mayor. So his wife was having an affair with his best friend. He kind of just got drunk and went off the rails. He ended up resigning, and now he lives on a houseboat. So a murder happens within his community, and he is appointed by the current sheriff to help solve the mystery. And the current sheriff is his best friend, who is now with his ex-wife. So he agrees, for the sake of the community, to kind of help solve this murder. I just thought that this book was really good. I think that Silas House really incorporated a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Representation in here, with it being set in the 1950s. Like, I think he consciously tried to make sure that characters were really diverse. And I was really fascinated because it really goes into the formation of lakes and how lakes are developed in communities for tourism. And I actually live in a town that has a giant lake that brings in a lot of tourism for my community. And I had never really put in any thought. I guess I had just assumed that lakes like that just existed and that they weren't formed, but they were formed. And communities, like actual towns, people, homes, graveyards, were uprooted so these lakes could be made. And it goes into the politics of that and how that affected community and people who didn't want to leave their homes, and how people who had children or families buried, like, they got filled up with water. And I don't know, it was just really fascinating and extremely thought-provoking. And I think on top of the novel being really good and not overly gory and kind of keeping me on my toes, and, you know, it wasn't overly predictable or anything like that, but the way it made me think and reflect upon things like that and made me aware of things like that really added to this so much. He did say that he plans on kind of making this a series, and I'm really pumped because, again, I don't typically like thrillers, mysteries, that type of thing. I wouldn't say it's a cozy mystery, but I wouldn't say it's like overly gory or anything like that. But I don't know, I'm kind of excited to kind of continue to read in this genre as he writes more books. The next book that I read in November was Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. This tells the story of a young woman named Signa, and basically she is kind of cursed. So all of her caretakers end up passing away, and she's kind of passed from family to family because she has a fortune, and then whoever's taking care of her, aunts, uncles, distant cousins, whomever, they pass away. And Signa has the ability to communicate with ghosts and to communicate with death. So she is off to a new estate to live with some cousins, and she's really starting to love it there and the community that it has, when a ghost kind of reaches out to Signa to let her know that it has been murdered and that they believe the same thing is happening to her cousin. So Signa has to investigate and to find out what has been happening. I loved this book. I'd had it on my TBR. I really wanted to read it last fall, and then I just didn't have time. So I was so happy to read it this fall. It is just like a mix of The Secret Garden with the mystery and going to live on an estate and all of that, combined with the invisible life of Addie LaRue, with the connection of the past and with ghost and with death and kind of that romance side of things. I just loved this book. I absolutely devoured it, and I think it ended in the perfect way. I can't wait to read like the next book. I think there's like 2 or 3 out in the series. The next book that I read was The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore by Laurie Gilmore. I found The Pumpkin Spice Cafe okay. Like, it was fine, but I didn't love it. It was like a 2.5, 3-star read for me. So I didn't go into The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore with a lot of really high expectations. I just kind of needed a palate cleanser and just like a fun little romance to read for work. So this tells the story of Hazel. She's nearing 30 and she works in a bookstore, and she has realized that she's never really lived her life. She never had wild teenage years. She never really dated or, you know, did anything in her 20s. And now she's turning 30 and she realizes that she's not enjoyed or lived her life at all, and she wants to. So she kind of recruits Noah, who's a couple years younger than her. He's kind of known as being a little bit of a playboy and just kind of dating women and not, you know, taking life seriously and just being fun to be around, to kind of teach her how to do that. And of course, it's like a budding relationship, and, you know, at first it's like, well, we're just going to have fun. We're just going to have this friends of the benefits thing. But of course, they both start feeling more. And I just love that trope. Like, I love fake dating. I love we're just, you know, going to pretend to date for a while. And the whole, like, I'm getting butterflies and I'm falling in love, and do they feel the same? I think they do, but then no, this is all just pretend. I just eat that up. That's my one of my favorite things to read. And I also just really related to Hazel. I also felt like that in like my mid to late 20s, just kind of like, I've done nothing in my life, and I'm, you know, like, I don't know, I just really related to Hazel. And she was just a kindred spirit, and it was beautiful to read about her kind of taking life into her own hands and creating a life and a future for herself that she desired and that she wanted. I thought it was just really beautiful, and I loved it. So I definitely will be continuing on with the series after that, if anything, just to have little glimpses of like Hazel and Noah. All right, the last book that I read in the month of November was The Scapegoat by Daphne du Maurier. This is kind of similar to like The Fantastic Mr. Ripley, which I've never read. I've only seen the miniseries with Andrew Scott and Johnny Flynn, and it is a lot to take, so don't watch it unless you really, really want to. But anyway, so this tells the story of a man, and he is vacationing in France when he meets his doppelganger. They look exactly alike, and they meet and they like drink and kind of hang out together, and the man wakes up the next morning to find that his doppelganger has left and taken his ID, his clothes, everything, has fled the country, and now he kind of has no choice but to go and live the other man's life, to live his doppelganger's life on this estate that's kind of crumbling and falling apart. His business is falling apart, his marriage is falling apart, he's having affairs. It's a mess. And so he has to kind of go in and try to fix what's going on. I just loved this book. It was such an interesting and just really fascinating character study through the first half, just kind of seeing how different characters react to different circumstances, and seeing our main character try to fix the mess, and to see him, he was quite a loner before, so to see him kind of grow and love and to take care of this other man's family, I really enjoyed that. And then the end, when the mystery kind of picked up and you didn't know what the heck was going to happen, like it was a wild ride at the end, I just loved it so much. I love reading du Maurier. I think that she's perfect for the fall time to just add like a little spooky, a little bit more suspense into your regular reading. And I think that was just so different. Like I would say, you know, like Jamaica Inn and My Cousin Rachel and Rebecca, I think that those are all quite similar, but this one was just so different from her other writings, and I really enjoyed kind of seeing a different side of her writing as well. All right, friends, that is a quick sum up of my books that I read in the past couple of months. Thank you so much for being here and listening to me babble on about books. I know there was a lot of noises going on outside. I think there's some type of construction or work or something like that going on out there. But anyway, again, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate your time, and hopefully I will see you very soon. I would really like to talk about my winter TBR in a few days, so hopefully we'll sit down and get to chat about that soon. Bye.